Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Grab Your Torch with Caleb and Joel. We are not here to recap an episode this week. We're here to talk about some winner rankings for this final nine,
Right.
which seems kind of straightforward at this point, but I do think a lot of people have strong chances of winning. And I think out of this top nine, in the past we've seen, a lot of different players have really good chances to win in the top, like in the certain top of a group. But I do think we have a lot of strong contenders here. So it'll be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, I completely agree. Where we talked a little bit before that, like, I feel like we've kind of narrowed it down to the three people most likely to win. But like, if anyone at this point won, I wouldn't be like just like in shock and awe, Like I'd just be like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. They're a good winner. So, I'm pretty excited to do this ranking.
All right. Should we start at the bottom and go up?
Yeah, who do you have dead last?
So let's just start out. Just to clarify, we're doing winner equity rankings. So basically, like, who do we think has the best chance of winning at this point in the game? This is not who we think is going to go out next week. Whereas I do think some of it could align a little bit with that. But for the most part, we're ranking who do we think is going to win out of these top nine, who has the best chance of winning, and who has the best chance of getting to the end and convincing the jury to give them the votes. And so for me, at number nine, I have Star. You know, I don't think I think she could get to the end, but probably won't. And if she does, I don't think she's going to get any votes because we haven't seen hardly any stuff from her. We haven't seen a lot of her perspective about how she wants the game to go. She basically gave the idol to Eva, and that's kind of most of the game we've seen out of her. And it seems like it was a good move at the time, but we haven't seen really much follow up on that and their relationship. She's obviously outside of this power alliance, so she doesn't really have anything to do this week. This last episode, she sat on her hands kind of the whole episode. We only got a little bit of her at the journey, so I just don't think it's in the cards for her. I like her as a person. She's really fun to watch. She's really funny and entertaining, but I just don't see her as a winner at this point.
I completely agree. I also have her dead last. I think I think the community saw like her giving Eva the idol like as a, oh, this is actually kind of like a big brain play, when I don't think she knows just her herself was like, oh yeah, this is smart. I have this public idol and I gave it away. Like I think it was a literal emotional move. That's why she did it. And we kind of like see that she's not really in any good talks. The one time, like her one really good moment was hyping up Cedric, which like, might lead to her getting a jury vote from Cedric, perhaps, if she makes it to the final three. But I don't even see like any combination of people at the end that she can personally beat, which is why I have her last.
I'd agree. And how about you jump into your eight? We can do it a little bit like a snake ranking.
Yes, this is controversial, and I know it. I do have Mary. Yes, I know. I love Mary. I think she's probably one of the best characters of the season. Do I think she's winning now? For a few reasons. One, she definitely has like solidified herself with like the top alliance, where we're talking like Joe, Eva, David, Kyle, like that. Those are her people. Like maybe not necessarily Kyle, but like the people she has attached herself to are the people that the bottom people are coming after. And so if she gets her way, if she gets to the end, she's probably with David, which like I do think that David would beat her. Now, do I think David would beat other people? Not really. But like I think David specifically beats her. And I think that's the scenario she's going for. I think maybe she could beat Star, but like if she's against any other person, I don't see people giving her the votes. I don't even see Cedric really wanting to give her the vote when he was never even that close to her. And that's also reason I think she's towards the bottom.
Yeah, that's interesting for me. I have a lot higher. I think she might be in some trouble this week, um, just because of her connection with David, and I do think she's cemented herself in a good spot. The only thing for me is there's a lot of time left in the game. I think she could get a really big uptick in, her strategy. She's been kind of dormant for a while. So I do think she has the potential to play really well because we've seen that early on. We've seen a lot of her interesting perspectives and her, scrappying and being the last Vula member. So I think all of that is reason for me to say that she might go further. I think she could go deep, and she could end up being like that last like kind of last dragon to kill before making it to the end. It's like, oh, this is probably the biggest threat at this point of the game. Like we saw with like Maria from 46, get her out before the end. I'm not sure. But I think she has the potential to do really well. So I have her a bit higher, um, but not too terribly higher. I just think she has a higher chance of winning this other people. But for my number 8, I have David. I just from this episode, it's pretty reactive from last week, but I think we got a lot of even though he was saying the correct things, we just got to see him approaching it a lot in the wrong way, being abrasive to Kyle in front of his alliance. And then also talking directly to Chrissy and, unveiling a strategy in front of everyone at Tribal, saying, oh, this is the game we're playing. We always get targeted as the big guys. Like now we're working together, deal with it, basically is what he was saying. And then we saw after that Camilla kind of call him out for his jury management. So I do think, David could win in certain scenarios, like maybe the what you mentioned with like Marion Stark. I think he'd have a good potential to win there. But other than that, I think most of these other people probably would get votes over him at this point. It's I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the stuff he said this week. And so I just had him pretty low. I think he has a good chance of making it to the end, but I don't think he's getting votes.
Hey, that's fair. I definitely have him higher, and I have reasoning for it as well. But I think he's gonna win? No, I don't really think he has much of a shot. But who do you have next?
7, I have Mitch. I love Mitch. He's awesome. I just hope he could dig himself out. It was definitely the incorrect read to try to get Siva back together this week. I know he's trying to do whatever it takes, but I don't know. It's really hard at this point. I think he needs to try to just find cracks in this, top 5 alliance and try to pit them against each other instead of just trying to like, oh, hey, we're all familiar with each other. Let's just pull together and do something. It was an attempt, but it was just not a really smart one and didn't really pan out to a lot. Um, Besides that, he has a really good story. We've seen that a lot. We've seen people talk to about his story and how dangerous he would be to get to the end. I believe that was Joe maybe last week talking about that. It's like, oh, we got to watch out for Mitch. We don't want him to get to the end. So that could be reason to say like, oh, maybe he's that type of guy that's gonna get to the end and get a lot of votes because of that. But at the same time, I think you'll have a hard time getting there. And he reminds me a little bit of Kyle from last season in that way because he's good at challenges and he also has a good story too. He's really likable. But he just really needs to up his position in the game, and he's just not doing well with his game positioning right now. Just because of this tight alliance, he needs to figure out a way to break cracks into it, pull some people out, and it seems like Mills were and Kyle potentially as well willing to work with him to do something. So we'll see if that ever pans out. That's why I have him at 7 though.
I have him actually in the exact same place. I don't think he's winning. I think he might even getting like a losing finalist edit at this point. We kind of saw with like some losing finalists, for example, Sue or like Jake from 45, like they'd attempt things a lot and it would never happen. Where he tried to get old Siva together, and guess what? First he went home. And we see like him do good work with Camilla, but like that felt more like good on Camilla than it felt like good on Mitch. And I don't know. I just don't see it. Even if he got to the end, I don't think his story is enough. Where I don't think a story really wins you the game anymore. Where like even Kinsey like had like a good story, but like a lot of other factors came into it, and I don't think like Mitch getting to the end just by like winning an immunity or two, just kind of slipping by, being on the bottom would necessarily get him the win.
That's fair. Do you have a 6?
Yes. Okay. Six. I'm gonna say Eva, which I think at this point there's like a huge gap between Mitch and Eva, where like I could totally see Eva winning the game. Where we see Joe be like, I'm willing to give up my game for her. But I think that's gonna be more like a tragedy with the idol, more so like him like actually just like jumping on the sword. And Eva is kind of like Joe's number two. She has the idol. It's very public. She's talked about it this episode. Like, I'm playing a very public game. She's about to get another advantage, but if someone finds out about it, and I mean, there's a real shot she just tells Joe, like at some point someone's going to take the shot, and I do think it's going to hit Eva before it hits Joe. And the like I try to look at this as like what is their like what are they trying to get to at the end of the game? Like if they got their perfect game, her perfect game is like with Joe and David or Joe and Shaheen, like people that beat her. Maybe not David, but like Joe especially like is very much seen as like the yin to the yang, like a little bit higher than her. And so I don't necessarily see her like winning, but I would love it if she did, honestly. I
Yeah.
like she's been such a great player this season, where at this point it's like I'm so happy with whoever wins.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I agree with you on the gap between them as well. I also have Eva at six, which is funny. But I do think for Eva, I'm not sure exactly where like her winner chances, just because to get there, I think it'll be hard for her to sit next to people that she has a good chance of winning because of her tight alliances, and that's how she's kind of making her way there. If she kind of sits next to like, you know, David and Camilla, or like David and Star, or something like that, Mitch, Mitch and Star, like I think she has different winner potentials, but I don't think I potentially see her getting there with that group of people. I did think of something really interesting though. It's like, what if Eva and Joe go head to head in Final Four fire making? Like, what if their story ends there? That'd be kind of wild. But
I could
I
see
guess
it.
Tony and Sarah kind of vibes a little bit there. But still interesting thought to have. I will say though, like she's a strong player. I think people are targeting her mostly because of her story and her connection with Joe. I think she needs to do some things on her own to gain a lot of support from the jury and get a lot of votes in the end. So that's why she's kind of the bottom of this group of six that all have a good shot at winning, in my opinion.
I completely agree. All right, do you or me?
Oh, I think it's me. So at five, I'm gonna go ahead and say Mary. I just have her a little bit higher than you, a few spots. I do think she's in the higher percentage chance of winning than what you had her in. Um, so I think we just have like David and Mary flipped, or something like that. Um, but I think Mary has a lot better of a chance of winning even than someone like Eva. Like I said earlier, I already talked about her, but I think she has a lot of potential to make some moves, and I think now's the time. She has a lot of game in her. She's got to actually, commit with it and do stuff, um, and get things to go her way, which she definitely has the potential to do. And I do think the edit also would favor that too. I don't think it's misleading. If that ended up happening and she started bulldozing and won, I think that would, fit with the season too. So I think she has a good chance of winning, but still the top four, I think they're all kind of in a league of their own a little bit even more.
I agree. We did have it flipped. This is where I have David, and my reasoning for David being this high is that like I feel like this edit has pointed to like someone in this like the overdogs are gonna win, and David's been like the main guy being like we're changing the game. He's been like a huge part of the evolution, and even though he is like you said, he's like doing he's thinking the right things, he's making the right reads, he's doing it wrong. I do think like it is also showing him like being right because Kyle and Camilla the whole game have been like, we have to keep this secret. And like, who's the person to figure it out? It's David. And I think that's a real big boon to him. I do think he's able to win out if like he has to. And I think if he's in a very specific jury, like he could definitely get votes. Like he probably has Mary's vote on lock. He could probably get Joe and Eva's if they're on the jury. That's three. He just needs one more to win. And I think there's like a definite way for him to win, but I also think his like best case scenario of like going in with like maybe Kyle or like Mary, like he probably loses that. But I do think crazy things happen in Survivor, and I think it's not like a death sentence. And he has a pretty like good enough story where like I don't think Mitch's game supports like his story. I think Eva could have like a game like she's already played pretty well and she has a great story, which I think is enough. And I think David's in the same boat as Eva, where like you can switch Eva and David in my mind, and it would be around the same.
Yeah. What do you have at four?
I have Camilla. I think Camilla is like probably arguably the best like player right now in my mind. Like if you put her on any given season, I think she probably plays the best. And I think she's playing very good now. I don't think it's good that her name's out. I think in Survivor, like once your name's out, it's like, oh crap. Like we saw with Shaheen, like Shaheen just got 2 votes in a row. And that's probably not going to stop for the rest of the game. And I think with Camilla, like even though she didn't get a vote, like people were like gunning for her,
Right.
and
Actively.
it was good that I caught to stop them. But like at some point, like people are gonna like have to take the shot at her. People have already called her a big threat. They know she's a big threat, and but I do think in a world like she could get to the end and like beat all these big guys, and I think that would be a very, very good story for her. And but I don't think it's gonna happen. I think you were kind of talking about Mary being like kind of the final boss for a little bit. I think Camilla's the final boss. I think someone's gonna have to take out Camilla to win the game.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I also have Camilla at four. I think she's in a really good position. I mean, not as much this week, but I think like what would have helped her the most is that if she truly was that kind of number six that Mary ended up being, and more people wanted to go with her, Dave was like, "Oh, let's just bring in Camilla to be the number six or whatever," and she wasn't as close. If she was in like Mary's position as Camille, the player, I think she'd be like probably one or two in the rankings. She'd have really,
I
really good chance to win. But now her and Kyle's position are kind of getting blown up a little bit. And, she's also, you know, been her name's been out there. And so I think that's really hard to come back from. And I agree with you. She's probably going to end up being more final boss, probably similar to Mary. I think they'll probably take her out before then, though. And if not, they're kind of screwed because she's played really well. And if she maneuvers her way to get to a very favorable final three, I think we could see a really good showdown there. So my number three is Joe. I think Joe's been playing, pretty straightforward. We've seen most of his thought process, and I honestly do think, with his alliance, he's playing, honest with them, and really keeping this alliance strong and working together. And so I think that's been really impressive. But at the same time, you know, he has a better chance of winning than all these people just because of how likable he is. I think he's led the charge a lot. Ultimately, you could say it's Kyle that prevented Camille from going home this week, but I think it was Joe that did it. And Joe's relationships with everyone that caused that to happen. And so I think that Joe's has a lot of potential to do really well and to win. And I think most scenarios he can get the votes. So I think he's in a really good spot.
yeah, I have Shaheen, and me and you, a little spoiler, we might have these things flipped. But I my reasoning is kind of what I talked about. Like he has 2 votes against him, which is good that like people are like, oh, he's a threat, like, and he keeps surviving and everything, but like there's a target on his back. Like I feel like his days are almost numbered in a sense that like Camilla and Kyle, like, they're gonna take a shot at some point. Someone's gonna take a shot. And I think it probably hits mostly because I think like at some point, some way, he's just gonna be seen as sketchy, or is he gonna make a move? And I don't know. I think there's like such a good way like he wins that like he just outlives Joe and Eva and he just gets to the end and wins. He's a good physical player. He's a good social player. He did kind of expose his relationship with Camilla, which I don't think was a good move. And then when Jeff asked him, he was kind of like, uh, I just locked eyes, and everyone was just kind of like, like we know you, like we see you, girl, kind of thing. Where we've seen some bad content, some good content, which doesn't make or break a winner in my eyes. But I do think the top two are in a better spot to win, and I think probably win in most circumstances.
You think that Joe would like win in a face off against Shine and just like someone else random?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably have to disagree with that. We'll get to that later, but we both talk about you can start with like your talk with number two about Kyle.
Okay. Kyle's just been playing like honestly such a good game. Like he gets his way nearly, I mean, most of the time he's gotten his way, besides like not taking out Shaheen, but I don't even think necessarily he was truly going for that. I think it might have just been more editing trick. But I think Kyle has, shown he's won immunity. He played at Isle correctly. He's been really the talking point of being like, I need this relationship to be like undercover. She's my number one. And like they've done a good job up until this point. But even then, like he got his way. He used Joe. He kind of like pushed David under the bus in the process, doing a really like subtle thing of being like, am I crazy? Like I'm trying to be respectful, which I think is good. I think with in most seasons, I think if Camilla and Kyle were at the end, Camilla would get the votes. I don't think that's how this season is because we've heard it again and again that this season's different. That
Right.
the meta is like the big people are going to win, that they're going to get the votes. And Kyle not only like has essentially played the same game as Camilla, but like he's won immunity, he's shown he's physical, he's been in these relationships, and he's always in the center while Camilla's always been kind of more on the out. And I think he's in a better spot next week that like Camilla's already taken the heat. David's taking the heat, and David is starting to not trust him, but also, like we said, David's also on the
Yeah,
bottom.
David doesn't have much power anymore at this point, you
Yeah.
know. He can pull in at least like one other vote, but besides that, I think people are probably willing to more willing to side with Kyle just because for the most part he's really straightforward. I think the only two maybe negative, not really that negative, just more emotional outbursts that we've seen from him were in episode one at the Earn the Tribe Supplies where he kind of goes crazy at that first challenge, which ended up not mattering at all. And then, with this episode, kind of him freaking out a little bit about Camilla's name being thrown out there, I think, he could have done it in a lot more calmer manner and not as tense, which kind of blew up his spot a little bit. So that was the only thing I see that he's kind of done maybe wrong, but we'll see if that actually impacts his game going forward. But besides that, he's played out of his mind. He has that auto play under his belt in the pre-merge. And he's, had the secret alliance with Camilla for a while, which, that's getting figured out. But besides the point, like he's kind of had that going with him for a while. He has relationships with pretty much everyone. And so I just think he's in a great spot. Um, the only reason I don't see him as number one is just because it's just like they're pretty close in my opinion, but I think my number one, we already know it's Shine. I think he just has a bigger, better chance of winning. But I do think Kyle is playing really well. And he's even having Camilla do some of his dirty work. We saw that last week with like, him kind of cooking up the idea to try to maybe throw out the feelers to David to take out Shaheen. And Camilla was the one to communicate that. And I think being able to let go of Camille at the right time, I think will be important for him because if he presses too hard, it's going to be his downfall. And if he's not flexible, which is one of the survivor rules, if you listen to Why Blank Loss, stay flexible. Like if he's not flexible in that and can pivot and rely on his other relationships, that's probably the biggest way he'll shoot himself in the foot if that comes to be. But I think he gets votes in pretty much any scenario. And he has a really good shot at winning.
I completely agree. Let's get to our number ones.
Yeah, I'll start first. You already talked about Shining a little bit, and I talked about him a lot the last couple weeks on the podcast. But I think he's has a really good shot to win just because, you know, looking at it from an edit perspective at first, I know that's kind of lame, but we've seen a lot of content from him from other people. We saw that in the flashback, or not the flashback, it was the previous on Survivor. We saw that from Chrissy. It was like, Shine has a really good shot of winning. That was the subject of conversation. His name's been thrown out a couple times, which, that could be a bad thing, obviously, because your name's being thrown out there, probably going to get some votes. I do think, though, everyone's saying that he's a threat. In his confessionals, he's saying, I have a good shot of winning, not necessarily verbatim, but like I'm in a good position. He says stuff like that. And we've seen some of his lows. We've seen kind of his highs and lows as a player. So moving away from the edit stuff, we talked about him as a player itself. He's probably the most strategic person in that group of five, if you just had to do it based on like strategy and how you're playing. He's not as physical as the rest. And for that reason, I think he's in a position to where, he will be willing. We know this. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that he's willing to cut these people at the right time. And I think he will do that. And hopefully the other players are smart enough to realize that, or he's just going to get through, cut them all, and win. And I think he has a really good shot of doing that.
Hey, I can't disagree with any of that. I think truly the top three is like you put them in any order and like you can make a really solid argument. I'm sticking with Joe. I know he's getting like the golden boy edit, but I also think like we haven't had a winner with this kind of game in the new era. And I think this is how they would edit this winner. And I think specifically, like, if you're looking, like, we can look at the edit. Like, Joe was obviously, like, very much hidden during the Thomas round. Like, they were hiding him from all, like, he clearly was probably, like, on the same page. But, like, Shaheen got all the heat while he was just, like, da 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 da. Like, nothing really, like, negative hit his way. But also, like, he kind of, like, outlined his plan. He was like, hey, Charity's going, Say's going, I need him off the jury. They go. This round, Chrissy goes for him. He's like, we need to chop off the head of the snake. He immediately takes her out. That's already three votes in a row where he's like gotten his way. He hasn't had, other than Chrissy, everyone's kind of scared to go after him. We talked about his emotions and everything. Where I think if you look by a strictly game, like David's going out before him. Camilla is probably going out before him. Eva is going to get targeted with the idol. Eva would play the idol for him. I think the only real way he goes home at this point is him just giving up his game for Eva, which I think is like a very real possibility, kind of like what you said, like Joe and Eva could be in fire and he just gives up, which I think is true. I think that could happen, but I think the way he like gives up his game is that he's going to try to give up his game and it's not going to work. And then he has to go on without Eva and win the game. Or like something like that. I still think he wins somehow. I think he probably wins the last few immunities because like they're more physically based and he just has to do a puzzle at the end. And I we haven't really seen him have to do puzzles, but like he seemed like he would probably be fine. But more why I think this would happen is that I think you put him against anyone in any combination left in the game. I think he wins. I think Shaheen versus him might end up in a tie, but I think if those two are together, he's with Eva. Eva votes for him. I think most people in the game would vote for him in a tie. Um, because let's go through it. I think Kyle would vote for Joe over Shaheen just because Joe just saved Camilla. I think Cedric is kind of up in the air, but like they also didn't get him a lot of time to talk. And
Yeah.
so, but we saw that Star trusted Joe. Like I think Joe was the first person she went to. If
I mean, I
I'm
think Chrissy would probably vote for Shine.
That's true, but you know, I think again, I think it would probably lead to a tie.
Yeah.
But I don't think Joe's necessarily trying to get to the end with Shaheen. I think he's trying to get to
Right.
the and I think he beats Eva.
I do think the best thing for his game though would for Eva to be cut loose, and so without Eva, I think he has a lot more maneuverability, and he might be like, all right, I gotta do it for Eva and clutch up and just go on a tear.
And I could see that now. And like realistically, like, do I think it's happening? Do I think he's probably going to be like the fan favorite, like the person who gets cut at the end? I think there's such a high possibility. But I also think the same with Shaheen. And I wouldn't be mad with any of these people winning. I just think it's going to be Joe because I think this is how someone like if Tom Westman won Survivor nowadays, I think this is the edit like he would get.
Yeah, I think at this point, the only person I'd be disappointed at winning a star, just because we haven't seen that much from her. Everyone else, like depending on how the rest of the season goes, could be really exciting. So we'll see how that goes. We might do an
Yeah.
update of this like before the finale or something. We'll see. But I think we have a really good kind of thoughts about like what's the state of the game. And I hope we get some more, dynamics within the tribe. We get to see, not a bulldoze and Pagong of this of these strong alliance with the
That
strong
was
alliance.
fun.
But um, we haven't seen a Pagong in years, so it could be fun to watch. Unless you count the Reba 4. I guess that's kind of one too, but we'll see.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, thanks guys for watching and or listening. And please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and we'll be back once again on Wednesday to recap episode number 9.
Yeah. All right. See ya.